What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Construction Technology Podcast. I'm here with Andrew from Join and Mike from Build Vision. What's up, boys? What's on your mind this week? Mike.
Contracts from Claude is on my mind this week.
Yeah, contracts from Claude is an interesting one, for sure.
I know this is in the notes for today, but I actually feel like Claude has had its moment in construction over the last 4 weeks. People have just woken up to Claude being a thing within construction. Obviously, we've been using it for quite a long time. This is what we see in like SMB, kind of mid-market contractors. Do you guys see the same thing?
I don't know anyone who is using Pick, Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude like individually, regularly. Like at the corporate level, I feel like there's a huge bifurcation, may not even be right, but like there's like a wide range of companies picking things up or having some formal initiative around it. But like everyone seems to have ChatGPT and Gemini and potentially Claude. I feel like I have heard of.
Copilot's surprisingly embedded. I mean, it makes sense given that most people are on SharePoint, but I'm actually really surprised that people are as happy with Copilot as I've been hearing.
To what degree is that IT lockdown, like comfort around data security and the established vendor of Microsoft? Like I don't have a good feel for that. And I thought you guys might.
I think it's 100% lock-in. I think it's whoever is on share. Ingestion is a big problem. Getting everything in the right area to be able to ask the prompt and have it get the right data that has the right metadata is like 80% of the problem. Obviously, when Microsoft released Teams, there was a famous case study of kind of lock-in and bundling versus kind of like new product entrance, given that Teams ended up just completely dominating Slack. And I think it's a very similar story here. People are just bundling, or teams are accepting that Copilot is bundled in, and it's like, well, I have all my documents in SharePoint. And now, so I already have this LLM that's baked in and has all this data access. But Claude is interesting, right? Because it's like you can upload documents from your desktop. You don't have the same lock-in.
Like Claude I think Cowork is now available on Microsoft computers.
Say it again.
Claude Cowork is now available on Microsoft computers.
Great.
So the process of you updating or changing an Excel sheet or a PowerPoint is actually better than Copilot. I don't think that's been disintermediated across the market, but I had an interview with, not an interview, I did a podcast with a general contractor this week. And I told her, I was like, before you sign up for any software, download Claude Cowork and try it out for yourself and try to do what you're trying to do. And my bet would be you can get 80% of the way there. And then it's on the vendors, on the tech solution to prove that they can do more value than what you can do because of the expertise they have, the X, Y, and Z they have. But again, like having someone download Claude Cowork or Claude on their computer, getting it approved by IT is, I think, a bigger hurdle at enterprises than at necessarily mid to small market companies where you kind of allowed to run. And I know we're talking a little bit about this later, but the DoD, Department of War, also just released a supply chain risk on Claude for any of its, again, I know it's getting litigated, but the position right now is that any vendors that work with the US government cannot use Claude. So we've had customers ask, is there Claude usage in your application? So that's an interesting conversation. If you're the IT person, you're obviously on the more conservative side. You're not going to implement Claude in order to possibly lose a project with a government agency. And then this changes every week. I couldn't imagine being in the seat of a CIO right now or a head of IT at a large firm.
It's one of the, I feel like that's like, I had a conversation with these two CIOs at big ER firms, and we were talking about like AI vendors, and this was years ago. But they looked at me and they were like, we have very good relationships with Microsoft. Like Microsoft is probably their largest like IT line item. Like we think about all these domain specific firms like CMIC and Procore and Autodesk and all that. But like first there's Microsoft. And that's a company that's done right by them as a CIO and as an organization for 50 years. Like, yeah, I would reach for Cowork too.
Microsoft's business
Copilot too. Yeah.
Is just like a random stat. I think Microsoft's business arm, so selling into businesses, is a $200 billion a year market. That is a crazy stat.
They're going to do really well. They've done a good job of just not even fast following, but pretty slow following but using their locked-in distribution to completely win. I mean, like Teams came out like what 8 years after Slack or something like that, and completely won. And they're moving pretty quick now. They recently launched, I believe, Copilot Health, and now Cowork, which is relatively fast. And if they can just emulate even like 75% of what Cowork can do, Claude Cowork can do, I actually believe that they'll win. Because again, it's all getting their documents in. There was a LinkedIn post that went, somewhat viral within construction tech circles this week, where an estimator was telling people how to use Claude Cowork. And in the video, I think he released a couple of videos, but in the video, he has his file structure and says like, this is where I have all my projects, and this is where I have like my AI personalities, and this is where I have my templates. And you already know that like, okay, if this was a mid-sized firm with multiple offices, this just wouldn't work because everything's in SharePoint or everything's in, God forbid, a custom drive that's on-prem, which is like a different story. And you could just imagine, okay, well, any big company who's not on SharePoint, this isn't going to work. Well, at least not now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Claude Cowork doesn't ingest documents in the cloud.
I got to imagine you can connect it. Like I've been able to point it at our hub. I haven't done anything document specific, but I pointed it at our MCP server at HubSpot pretty effectively. I got to imagine. I mean, at the same time, though, I am finding that my downloads folder like has a lot more things in it than it did a year ago or 2 years ago. Like I'm just passing around a lot more art. Like I bought an Excel license because the process of working with like these Claude generated Excel files is just smoother locally than like dragging and dropping it up to like Google Drive every time I want to edit it or like change something. So like on the one hand, theoretically, it's just data. It's just a get call to an AWS bucket somewhere. But on the other, like, I guess in practice, like I'm spending a lot more time with my local file system. Yeah.
Yeah, on a weekly basis, I have to clear out my memory because I just don't have enough space on my computer anymore. But that's because...
Whoa, what is it? 2002?
Yeah, honestly. Well, that's because I have a lot of folders locally because I'm either working with Claude and Cowork and I need to dump in a bunch of files because I'm running some test because it just doesn't grab from the cloud very well from what I see. So that's why I think Microsoft is going to win. Is like they'll figure it out. They have all the data, and if they could just route their agent to the appropriate place, then they'll win. Claude, Anthropic's going to zero. You heard it here first.
You heard it here first. Hey, I have a question. Speaking of going to zero or not, you guys both installed Claude Bot or whatever the fuck it's called these days.
OpenClaw.
OpenClaw, yeah. Is it still running?
Yes.
Okay.
I was chatting with it this morning.
Less than you were 2 weeks ago.
I'm using it about the same. I have a growing bookmark stack on X that I need to go back to implement projects for my OpenClaw. But this is where
the whole point was you can make OpenClaw go back and...
That's right. Yeah, I should. But this is where it's better than, let's say, like a Claude Code. With Claude Code, you need to have your computer open so that it's running in the background. With OpenClaw, it's completely on the go, and it's kind of like a single pane of glass. It's a single pane of glass into any of my API services and to coding. So it has my GitHub access, it has access to Claude Code. Now it has something called ACP, Agent Communication Protocol. You can bring in additional agents like a Claude Code. And so let's say it's 10 o'clock at night, I have an idea, I want to test something early in the morning, my laptop's closed, I have my phone, I'll text my OpenClaw, whose name is Bucatini, and I'll tell Bucatini, let's spin up a new GitHub repo and let's clone this project, but do this so that I can test it in the morning. And it can run async for 45 minutes, an hour, without having to open up Claude Code, because it's already interacting with the Claude Code if I ask it to spin it up. So it's still good, but like Claude's catching up pretty quickly. And I think a lot of other model vendors are just trying to copy what it is, which is basically like a React loop with a lot of API access and its own terminal, its own shell access. Mike, are you still using it as much?
Yeah, I think it's really good for like shower thoughts, if that's like the simplest metaphor for it. Like, for example, our COO was like trying to workshop some like TikTok ads as an example. So he was like just talking to the Claw bot, OpenClaw, whatever you call it now, and just being like, hey, like let's spin up like 4 or 5 of these, like go do that. And then it just sends him an email to do that. We did an interesting sales motion where we're going to apply for job openings at contractors and reps to fill positions using our agents. So we did like a kind of a communication stream around that. So it's more of these like ideas of like, hey, we're just like chatting through ideas, we're brainstorming, it can go do work and then we continue the conversation.
In
And
the
I can
shower.
come back. It kind of, yeah, I like that. I like this, like that thesis of like the shower thoughts perspective where you don't have access to your computer, or your wife's not yelling at you to like get off of your computer at 11 o'clock at night. You could be like, texting the bot instead.
Yeah, don't you feel like maybe the problem isn't it being hard to get to your laptop at 11 at night? It's the wife part, like you who's gonna have another kid in 2 months. But no, okay. So I'm loving this idea of TikTok ads of you in a shower talking to your Mac Mini.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Oh, did you get a
Yeah.
Mac Mini, Mike, or did you just do
I
this on
did.
like?
Yeah. I just got a Mac Mini. It's sitting right here. It's going to go behind me on this
Well,
desk. It's
why?
going to,
Is like the iMessage as a channel really that worth it for you, or is it more like the storage and the RAM?
I don't know. I hate WhatsApp. I just like not a meta fan. I'm sorry, and I just like can't rationalize getting my head around it. I don't like going into it. I feel like every time I go into it, something else pops up. Like it's just such a it's the green boxes. I'm telling you right now, I'm still sold on. I need to see a blue box on my text, and I cannot get over that hurdle. When I moved from Turner to Building Connected 16, or one of our first engineers took me to the Apple store and said, "You're no longer using Microsoft products and Android products," and I just haven't changed that since. And it's the best marketing ad of all time.
in the same way like software has dark, this is very construction relevant, but the same way like some software has dark mode, WhatsApp should implement blue mode, where like all the green in the app becomes blue to like give comfort to us iOS people.
Correct. So just like tying that back to construction, and what I think is very, very interesting, which I haven't seen a lot of companies do, is all right, all these customers, going back to our Microsoft conversation, are in Microsoft and in Microsoft Teams. How do you live in that environment with them? Going back to this point, like I, as a whatever you want to call a tech person, like a very loose to define tech person, wants to live in the Mac iMessage ecosystem. So whatever we can do to tie to that is super, super valuable. All right, now we're putting on the seat of I'm a contractor, I'm someone sitting there. What do I actually do on a day-to-day? What am I? If you looked at my history of like what apps I'm in, I guarantee you Outlook Teams is the highest percentage. So why does it even matter if they sign in the application if everything can live in Teams, can live in email, can live in their Excel?
We see that Teams is not like one for one with Slack, which I'm more familiar with, and I imagine most technology people are more familiar with, right? We actually see a fair amount of our application usage from like embedded browsers inside of Teams. Like people are able to like set up links and set up channels or whatever team set up teams, probably is what Teams calls them, like, around it, and you're sort of like, even though it's an application, it's sort of like a 21st century SharePoint sort of thing.
Yeah, I think there's this interesting pendulum swing where, all right, when I was first selling Building Connected in 2016, it was getting people off of email and Excel into my UI, into Building Connected's UI. We're gonna swing back hard, where it's like I don't want you in my UI. I'm gonna want you in Excel and Outlook. And the data points that I'll validate around this are: we use Ramp for expense management. Ramp doesn't want anybody signing into Ramp unless you're the financial person that's approving everything. Everything else is done via text, via email, and I think that is the motion that all these people want us to do.
Completely agree. I think I do.
You're not supposed to
actually really
agree.
believe in that as well. Well, yeah, I'm not supposed to agree, but I think this is why OpenClaw had such tremendous product market fit, is because you had these kind of like walled garden applications like ChatGPT and Claude, where you had to go sign in, authenticate, bring your context in. But what OpenClaw did is it flipped it on its head and said, you already have your established channels. You have your WhatsApp, which Mike hates. You have your Telegram, which now I use because of OpenClaw, iMessage, etc. And talk to your LLMs where you work via email or through some other channel. And I think that's why it's gotten the most GitHub stars in all of history, is because people are like, well, I'm already here, but now it's completely accessible and it's not through some third-party application.
And the app can add the GitHub star. I mean, and OpenClaw, no doubt, is adding the GitHub star.
I'm sure they're all legitimate. I'm sure.
So Andrew, why not? Give me the pushback. Why not?
Yeah, well, the like expense management makes a ton of sense, right? Like I hate expenses and I get nothing out of it except money. I like the money, but it's like a complete
one for one
transactional thing. Like I don't have to interpret any information that comes out of it. Really, the only person that should have to interpret it is the CFO or like the controller, whoever's like managing the expenses, right? And so that makes sense. And our CRM usage is like split, right? Where there's like I just have to log stuff. Like Gong has been amazing because now people who are interacting with customers don't have to go type notes with their fingers after most customer interactions, right? Like they don't have to log in, but like, hey, I want to review this history. Like, yeah, they log in for that. And I don't know if like every piece of a technology stack gets refined through usage, right? It's like the contract example. Like we were talking about how like if you use Claude to generate a contract for something, it's a contract that's never been used before. And it's likely to be extremely expensive because both legal teams that are agreeing to this are going to have to pour through it in detail, and they might or might not be familiar with the language in it. It just like by virtue of being new, it represents substantial risk. And that's true at the database level. Like, are we going to store the right fields? Are we going to like have the right model for the universe? It's true at like the user level. Is the user familiar with how this workflow works? Have they done this before? They know what they need to look out for. And like it's also true at the application layer, which encompasses both the logic, the thing that matches the expenses to the account or whatever, but also just the UI. Like, is this UI, does the UI like make it obvious that there's a next page of receipts that you need to go through, like if it's true? And it's not that like OpenClaw would be bad at that necessarily. It's just that it would be new every time if you're like coming in and doing it via text through one of these communication things. So I think there's still a space for I think the UI is still valued, and that it's been beaten on over and over by you and the rest of the industry.
Again, like I think the meta point would be that UIs are built for humans, and in the future, agents are going to be talking to agents, so there doesn't need to be an AI. That's the path Ramp's going. So in the construction world, like if we're talking about, let's like bid management, like sending out bids. I'm a general contractor. I send out bids to my subcontractors. Do I care where the button is to add a bidder? Or do I want to make sure that I get the right bidders, the right information? And if I can sit in my email and hey, like I get a project from an owner for a hospital, the application, whatever the application is fed with my bidders list. So I say, all I'm getting is, do I want to bid on this project? Yes or no? If yes, send everything out. There's agents working in the background completing these loops. So getting bids, creating bid forms, responding to questions and RFIs. Why can't that just be in an email format or a text format, as opposed to having to sign into a tool like Building Connected to see what my users did? And if you have a question being like, hey, where's Kevin at on this project? Why couldn't it engage an agent to call Kevin and say, Kevin, hey, are we bidding this? Yes or no? And is letting it respond to your email or to your phone saying, yeah, Kevin's going to respond, or let you call the person, doesn't matter. But completely pulling away the idea that there's any value in that UI, I think is very, very interesting. There's engagements and things that you're like, hey, we need to level out a quote. So you want to see all the quotes together. I think that's like, there's a UI perspective around that, but why couldn't that just be the Excel sheet that I've been using for 100 years and it just updates and collaborates?
Pretty Excel heavy.
So there's all these different like things. Like I'm just like trying to think like if you were Andrew, if you were to say, hey, we started Join today and we didn't want to have a UI, and just like invert that thinking, how would the customers engage differently with the application? What would be the pros and cons of that? It's just an interesting mental exercise that I've been trying to like work through.
Yeah, there's going to be an extent.
It's an interesting mental exercise. Luigi, you were gonna jump in.
I was just going to say, like, I think there's a limit to this trend, right? So if the pendulum is swinging back to, let's say, on local memory, lower UI, so existing channels, like let's say through OpenClaw, I think that has a limitation. I think that limitation is collaboration software. And I think it's because your existing channels do a bad job at collaboration, and it's like barely multimodal. So within WhatsApp, for example, it's effectively just text. It's effectively text and PNGs, but you need a lot more of that if you're doing, let's say, value engineering within construction. If I'm going to advocate, let's say, for Andrew's point, I see a lot of value in the common UI for some of these complex tasks. If you're talking about logging expenses, this is like a single player game. Like, you just don't need to go line item by line item. You just need to send it to the right place. And ideally, you're doing as little logging as possible.
The other thing is the like shared UI. Like the for us, and I want to come back to building connected, but for us, right, like it's the fact that everyone looks at the data the same way is like part of the value that the whole team gets around and looks in at the data and they see a common presentation of it, like that they can all get comfortable with, and then that like is consistent through time is a lot of the value of join. But
Yeah.
like building connected is this incredibly durable product. It's this amazing like I mean, we're starting integrations with bid management things, and like it's not. It doesn't look like it's a suite of products we need to integrate with to cover our customer base. Like, way to go, Mike. Way to go, building connected team. And when we talk to people, like building connected talked a lot about the network, but that doesn't appear to be why people love it these days. People fucking love the UI. Like, that's money. People love how well it works. And I just, like, I guess if you think that that whole knowledge work, the whole bid management thing, that like time spent on bid management is going to zero. Like,
I think
human time,
human
person,
time spent was going to zero.
time spent on bid management. If you think that's going to zero, then you don't need a UI. But if you think it's going to 2% or 1%, like it's like a ton more is automated, but I still have to get in there, doesn't it still come back to like the value that, like the way that the person will engage, like that comes in to audit it and to QA it, and like, yeah, instead of 50 people doing bid management, you have one person doing bid management, but like, boy, do they have to get in and really quickly understand like a wide array of projects. They need to do it consistently. And they like the UI doesn't live like the UI doesn't live just in the computer. The UI also lives in people's brains who become familiar with it and know how to interpret it. Like like I have dreams sometimes where I'm just like looking at like Visual Studio Code. They're actually great dreams. It's great, man. But like it lives, like I have inside my head neurons that are configured to understand various UIs well, and I'm familiar with them, and I can very quickly interpret information that comes from that much faster, I would say, than like similar text information. Because text, you gotta like read it, and you're saying, well, you can start to like have a standard format for it and use like bullets and so forth. And I'll be like, yeah, we're recreating DOS UIs. Like, if we start talking about consistency of presentation, like, comes to the UI. So I don't know, man. Like, anyway.
No, on that point, you will still need a UI, but it's going to change. It's just the user is changing. The user no longer has emotions like us. The user has like a single job. And I think it's actually really exemplified by this post from Zachary Batt. This is the viral post that I was talking about. So he says, my coworkers think I've gotten dramatically better at my job. He goes on to basically say that he's discovered Claude Cowork, okay? And he has a bunch of commands and this unique folder structure. And let me just kind of jump to the point here, where we can talk about how this is going to change. So here he's using Claude Cowork. Claude Cowork, I mean, if you don't know, is it's made by a company called Anthropic. Anthropic is an OpenAI competitor. And Cowork is kind of like chat, except it has access to a specific folder. So here you can see he's pointing it to his local drive. Now, like,
with that being said,
what's the point?
Procurement had
this off. So what he's doing here is he's going through his folder structure. He has some instructions for his agent. And then his agent, in taking in some documentation like an RFP or maybe drawings or specifications, spits out a bunch of stuff. And then he ends up generating scopes of work. So what's the point of this? If a general contractor, and we've had this conversation before where we think, let's say, CM fees are going down or trending down over time. If a general contractor is just taking in information and now conducting some operation on that information to spit out questions and scopes, what is the real value add here? It's probably not as much as it was in the past, where your output and your bid was actually a function of how well you did that process. If that process is being, let's say, unified by agents, well, number one, now your bid manager is actually an agent. And if you need to use Building Connected, now that agent has to go use Building Connected, but it would be more efficient if you gave it a command line interface. And now you, as a general contractor, your value is no longer in how good your process is, because it seems like it's going to somewhat diffuse. The value of that is going to diffuse over every general contract.
Like if everyone has, actually it was one of our, I'll give him a shout out, it was Will Lichtig at Bolt, in a conversation raised this like really interesting question. He's like, look, like what if the differential in proprietary knowledge goes to zero between us and our customers? What if the market completely prices the work? Like it's just knowable to everyone at all times what a given scope of work is going to cost. Like how does our business change? Like that in that case, like if that has happened, actually I would argue maybe human building connected usage does go to zero, and it's like best done through text. Like here's a drawing set, like what does this cost? Could just be text. Yeah, that's pretty fair.
I do think that any operation, any deterministic operation within a set of documents will be competed away. Meaning, people who I need to have a set of documents, generate my submittal review. Okay, that's going to be competed away because over time it's just becoming really easy to do that without anything proprietary. And now out of the box with Claude, you can get like 80% of the way there, maybe 85% of the way there. So the value is not going to be in your process for understanding this information. It has to be other things.
But I'm thinking of one of our customers who helped us really understand pre-con over time, and she described how she was like, yeah, look, we do all this analysis and all this back and forth, but the fundamental value of pre-con is actually like mobilizing and engaging like the people who are going to perform the work, the superintendents and the ops people, like getting them engaged and having them understand the project earlier and have a better sense of it and readiness to go build this fucking thing, like when the work actually commences. And that a lot of the activities that happen, like, yeah, there's a knowledge product that's produced, but then there's also like a change that happens inside the superintendent's head, where they're like, okay, I have an understanding of this project, and I better understand the owner's goals, and like, I'm more confident in the constructability of this thing, and I'm not going to yell at the pre-con team for throwing it over the wall to us, even if it's still exactly the same when it gets thrown over the wall.
I think that's right. I think there's a lot of components of value within pre-con, and I think the process element it just won't be as much of an advantage, but it probably will be within your relationship with a customer if applicable. And I think like the stuff that you're doing at Join, I think is less susceptible.
Thank you.
Because you're welcome. Because you're not dealing in like a price shootout environment for the most part.
Yeah.
Right. And like that is going to be, I think, like you may even be able to do that completely with agents at one point. Right, where you have an agent just win the job because it's completely deterministic and it can mobilize subcontractor labor and like there's no value add on.
Like we have we moved into a new house and like apparently the sewer lateral is 100 years old. We need to get it replaced. The joys of homeownership. And just getting prices has been this is a different universe than we talk about, right? Like this is a $10,000 construction job, right? When it happened, I'm not thrilled about that number, but like just getting a price has been very challenging. Like people are busy right now, and it's interesting. It's just been very challenging to get that price. And there's some site knowledge that you need to have, but like did you I can answer all these questions. I've answered all these questions for so many people already. Like I can't believe I'm like answering whether it's 1 unit or 2 units again.
But how much of that is if you think about even in commercial construction is all of these contractors just overloaded with work. And even if an agent can do an automatic takeoff, like, are you as a contractor going to want to do 1,000 projects? The answer is probably no.
Yeah. Like what if you win them all?
Why?
So
why wouldn't they?
You can't. So before AI, I'll give you an example. Going back to the building connected position, we obviously had a really solid general contractor product, help general contractors bid projects. We had 1 million monthly active users in the application. So we're like, hey, we have every eye of every subcontractor. Let's go build tools for them. Let's go help them manage their bid board. Let's go help them win more projects. The feedback we got from the majority of the subcontractors is we don't need to win more projects. We need to win better projects. So by giving tooling to making them more efficient, more effective in doing takeoffs, X, Y, and Z actually doesn't move the needle for them. A mechanical subcontractor in Buffalo, New York can only have X capacity. They want to go work with specific clients. They want to go work with both specific general contractors. They don't want to get a bid from a McDonald's if they do hospital projects. It doesn't matter if they have all the tooling in the world to do that. They cannot support the labor infrastructure around it. I think that's the bigger friction point. Going back to our combo last week about Anthropic, we're only really solving this 20% piece, which is like what's done on a computer right now. To like the reason why I then keep giving props to Join, but Join is a collaboration tool where there's multiple parties that are never going to be on one Claude code or one Microsoft instance. So there's huge amount of value for having a UI, a collaborative environment, so all these parties can come in. Anything outside of that is getting commoditized down to zero. So you're not collaborating with multiple parties, it's going to be commoditized down to zero. And you saw that with like, if you think about like how the banking world, everyone's like, oh, banks became more efficient with ATMs and their tellers moved in other roles. What happened in that actual market was banks saw their competitors getting ATMs and they were losing customers to their competitors because they had an ATM and you could get cash out 24/7 as opposed to banking hours. So that bank was forced to have an ATM tool. If you think about that in construction, all of these contractors are going to be forced to have an AI tool. So now it's the focus of like, where do you actually provide value to your customer? How do you collaborate better with your customer? How do you offer additional services to your customer? And that's where the value prop actually comes in. So if all of these tools and functionalities and workflows are going to be commoditized down, it's where do you expose and provide additional value to your customers is where the real value will be driven.
It's an interesting example, Mike, because when ATMs came out, tellers didn't go away. Like it just increased the surface area of your offering.
So I think the pushback on it, like the historical story was like, oh, it did replace labor because those, like you can see there's more bankers, people in the bank industry than there were pre-ATM. I think the actual like first principle change was that it normalized something and then it gave those businesses saying, hey, this isn't a nice to have anymore. It's a must have for our business. But now I need to figure out how I make more money. Because before, if I was the only bank in my city and I was open from 9 to 5 and I had 4 tellers and the customers would come in deposit, now everything's online. I need to figure out how do I as a bank operate to be more efficient. So you saw this massive, like everyone's like, there's no more regional banks. There's no more regional banks because there's so many efficiencies that are layered on in a large organization that why wouldn't I just go to JP Morgan Chase as opposed to a local bank? And if you think about that, how does that shift to construction? If you're like, hey, I'm able to do these back office workflows automatically. I'm building a relationship with the customer. So, hey, I'm an owner that's developing buildings across the country. I'm going to want a national general contractor that's doing everything automatic, but I have strong relationships with the end parties that are providing me additional value. Like I'm doing offsite manufacturing, so I can like do modular construction of my McDonald's. My McDonald's get developed and installed in 2 weeks as opposed to 8 months, and I'll pay a premium for that. We're seeing this play out in the lawyer space with the same perspective of like a due diligence process used to take 3 months. Harvey comes in and says, hey, we're going to help you do it in 1 month. If that 3-month bill was $8 million, a lawyer can now charge $16 to $24 million for a 1-month process because the deal gets closed faster. That's commoditizing away all of the actual due diligence process, but it's giving them the ability to offer these additional services at a faster time slot.
Today, the owner, the lawyer can charge 16 or 24 for doing it faster, but they compete and they're not spending any more labor on it to do it in a month. So won't that number get driven down as these tools permeate the market and as iBankers and companies learn, like, oh, you're like,
I think
we're not paying 24
in that
million.
world, you're relying on the relationship with the lawyer. You're offloading it to the lawyer. There's a reason why you're an iBanker. You're not doing this in-house. So in that example, you're looking at the bottom line. Hey, if I close this deal in 1 month as opposed to 3 months, I see this amount of ROI.
Yeah, but like you're gonna like other legal firms will come to you and say, we implemented Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
We can do it too, and we'll charge you 10 instead of 12.
Yeah, I think there's a network effect portion of that where like, will it actually combined into a couple of only platforms where Legore and Harvey were the only winners because they'll be able to offer competitive pieces at scale. They'll have proprietary data. They'll have embedded workflows with these customers. Like a DLA Piper, as an example, isn't going to continuously swap back and forth between Harvey, Legora, and whatever new tool comes up. So I think there's a lot of foundational pieces that will prevent that from happening.
Through their scale, they will be able to better use it and like
becomes a go-to-market motion.
They will have
it's all a go-to-market motion.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
That hasn't diffused in the market, but I definitely see a world where As soon as you ingest the documents, it's one-click processing and you get everything. Here's the scope, here are the questions, here's the uncertainty, here's the quantity takeoffs, here's the contract review. But if that's true, then as a contractor, you either need to be a lot more choosy. You need to, what people really want, to your point, is to increase their win rate, but to do fewer projects. They want better quality projects.
They want to win. They want to win better projects. They don't want to win more projects. They want to win better projects.
Win better projects. I do agree. So which reality do we think is most likely? One, general contractors end up bidding a lot more projects. They bid a lot more projects because it's really easy. The cost to bid a project precipitously drops. I'm not going to say towards zero because I think we say that too much, but it goes down a lot. So if the cost to bid a project is now 10% of the cost, I can widen my aperture if I want to grow. Two, they bid less projects, but they add value in a way that can't be commoditized through an LLM. Or three, the general contracting model fundamentally changes, where now it doesn't make sense if you're just doing CM. You actually have to provide some labor for you to have some kind of competitive advantage. Which universe do you think is most likely?
So my position would be the personnel at the general contractor are going to have their salaries drastically increase, because if all of these workflows are commoditized, the owner is going to want to work with Andrew. I want Andrew running my job. I will pay a premium for Andrew. Nothing else matters.
Andrew as the CEO of Join, or Andrew as
Andrew as the general contractor. I want Andrew as the PX on this project running this hospital. I will pay a premium for that because everything else is commoditizing away. So everything comes back to the labor functionality of that. The 80% of the work that's not done on a computer is the largest value prop that's going to be positioned. I think general contractor employees will be able to charge a premium for that service.
The CME employees, because one of the trends we see is our customers, when we talk to them about year-over-year growth, they're all like the big ones. It's crazy numbers, a lot of it driven by data center, but their craft workforces are often growing even faster. Like there are big craft labor pools inside of these general contractors now. And so I would say there's evidence of 3 happening already. And I think people have been talking about how many bidders you see, in part driven by Building Connected, as a general contractor. An owner puts a job out to bid, it's not uncommon to see 10 to 15 general contractors bid it, each of them struggling to get scopes, 3 qualified bidders for each trade. That even pre-LLM, technology had reduced the cost. You don't have to drive to the fucking plan room and buy a physical copy of a stack of plans to take a look. So yeah, I think you can see 3. I think 3 the others might happen as well, but I think 3. I think you see more engagement in services that are delivering value into the end structure, which could be craft labor, it could be supply chain, it could be equipment centralization, it could be financial methods, leveraging scale and balance sheet and financial sophistication to deliver things more cheaply.
So everything Turner is doing at scale.
I was going to say everything at Build Vision lets people do at scale.
No. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think we touched up on this before, but I also see subcontractors moving increasingly into the general contracting box because now they have alpha, right? They have an advantage. If the majority, let's say I'm doing a hospital project, if the majority of the cost is, well, I already have a cost advantage over you as a general contractor. And sure, I need to do a few more things, but if understanding that risk and quantifying that risk is now trivial, there's not really much of a hurdle for me to do that. It's I now can probably compete against you and win.
It's the people. It's the people behind it though, right? They want the mechanic or the guy that's been running mechanical scope for 30 years on that hospital project. They don't want Mike, Luigi, Andrew, mechanical contractor that now has an AI tool to go do that project that doesn't know what an elbow is in pipe. I think this rubber band back to the actual trade is going to accelerate, and they're going to be some of the highest paid people in the country because of that.
I can see it. Because that work is not, that the demand for it is only increasing, but we know we're very supply constrained. But everything surrounding it, the kind of the homework to enable that work is becoming a lot easier. Meaning an owner is going to be able to spin up a project faster. Somebody will be able to underwrite that job faster. And now you can connect the demand and the supply side a little bit more cleanly without all this hurdle. So I think all the inefficiency, the money that was given towards people who were only adding value, I think that does go down. But now there's probably a more direct conduit to the actual labor on site.
And I think the most successful companies will be the ones that have very, very strong programs to upskill their employees so they can bring in someone from college and get them into a position and commit to that person for 10 years so that in 10 years that person's there.
Yeah, what's the time to grizzled PM?
To value.
Can you shift that in?
Because again, like this, I literally, the first thing I did on my job, the first job I was at Turner, was read the spec book. It was in 17 binders. I read the entire thing. But like, I'm telling a chatbot being
and now you're in tech.
But if you think about it, it's like, all right, that value prop of like, now I was understanding how those nodes connect.
Yeah.
Getting this answer through a chatbot doesn't tell me how those nodes connect. Cool, I can text it and chat with it and give me examples. But at the end of the day, like that foundational knowledge of just like, you're in the field being like, that doesn't look right. You got to run into errors. Like there's not a right answer. We were doing like a retrofit of the Eagles Stadium, and we sold the value prop to the owner because we built the stadium 10 years ago that we knew where bedrock was. I spent the entire winter drilling micropiles in the parking lot on our dime to find bedrock. There was 3 feet of snow on the ground. I remember it clearly. Like this, but like that, like that's not solved by someone in Silicon Valley saying, "Here's your chatbot."
Yeah,
it was fun.
That's great. Gents, I feel like that's a good note. I got to drop.
Yeah. We'll cut it there. We hit 1 out of 3 topics for the week, but we'll push it to
Love it.
We'll push it to next week. Okay, let me
Good stuff,
sign
guys.
off. Hold on.